on Facebook and everywhere else, and you don't know whether it's live or not. So I'm just going to keep blabbering until I know that it is live, because I don't want people to miss the good stuff. I think it looks like we're live here. So, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome to another 10K Collective / Amazing FBA live. Today we are talking with Robert Giovannini of Ironplane. Hope you've got the name right there, Robert, on how to actually start a direct-to-consumer site as an Amazon seller. Lots of people talk about it. And a few people do it, and it's a real damp squib. So this is a super relevant topic for a lot of my clients, I think. So Robert, thanks so much for coming on live with this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. I'm just double checking and blabbering away here while I just
Okay.
double check things are going live. It looks like we're out on the interwebs. So what we're going to do, folks, as usual, we're going to record our podcast live. If you've got any questions for me or Robert, much better to ask Robert than me, then do ask any questions you have if you're listening live, and we can weave them into the show if it works out. Sometimes it works beautifully. Sometimes people have no questions on the show, but do ask any questions if you're watching this on the replay as well. Robert would be a great person to pick the brain of whom you should pick the brains, if that's good English.
All right.
And I think with that, we should get into the podcast before I blabber so much that everyone just leaves. Robert, are you ready to record this thing?
I am ready. I'm ready.
Excellent. Are you ready to commit your life, as they say? Right, let's do this thing.
Yeah. Such pressure now.
Yeah, no, major pressure just to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay, here
Thank
we
you.
go. Right then. Okay, camera back to me. Thank you, Zoom. Here we go. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome back to the 10K Collective podcast, part of the Amazing FBA family of podcasts. This one is for 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers. Now, Amazon seller, what does that mean? It means an e-commerce seller who sells on Amazon, quite probably wants to sell elsewhere, but doesn't get to do so because they suck at starting a D2C site. So that's what we're going to try and solve for you today. I have clients who are doing millions of dollars or pounds on Amazon, and they just cannot get the direct-to-consumer site to get revenue, or if they do, they can't get a profit out of it. So this is a very real problem for many, many people I know, and they're desperate to get off, but they can't. So Robert, thank you so much, first of all, for coming on the show. Come and rescue us here, our poor suffering Amazon sellers. Thanks for coming on.
Poor sellers.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a hard topic, for folks that are sitting there on these marketplaces because they're used to a certain way of doing business, right? And
absolutely.
Yeah, you got to think about a whole different mindset. And so I get it. In my world, we approach this issue from the opposite direction, right? We've got all of our clients, yes, some of them are selling on Amazon or other marketplaces, but the majority are not. And they're D2C or they're B2B. And it looks like there we go, right? And it looks like they they have almost as hard a time bridging the gap getting to Amazon or any of the marketplaces. So I don't think your audience is alone in this struggle in either direction. And so it's a very interesting topic for us too.
Yeah, it's very interesting to contemplate. I guess to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And so if you're used to selling on Amazon, it's hard to imagine that other people don't perceive the same opportunity you do. And I guess the same for the D2C side of the table. So tell us in some very brief terms, what is that you do and what is it that Ironplane does?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's been an interesting history. I got started in e-commerce back in '96 almost by accident. I was in Russia at the time, which is a bit ironic at the moment, but and I came across this amazing chess set. This guy was selling these at the market, just handcrafted, right? Beautiful stuff. And I had been fiddling around with HTML, and all of a sudden Front Page came out, which I don't even remember this tool, but you could actually drag and drop and build an e-commerce website, wired up to PayPal, and I don't even think we had security certificates at the time. And so I did this. I took some pictures. My wife and I got this thing up there. And son of a gun, if 2 weeks later, Ski Slope in Vancouver bought it sight unseen for $10,000. And I'm like, oh, there's something to this e-commerce thing, right? And so that started this journey over the years of buying and selling and building e-com sites. I'd been selling on Amazon in the earliest days. I think I had one company that I was consulting for that got kicked off Amazon because they didn't fulfill in time. I was on eBay, and we did all these kind of marketplace things. And then we started building our own sites bigger and better, and started to get asked to do that by our vendors and partners. And this is where Ironplane was born. And we became very much an e-commerce platform, website development company, but focused on e-commerce very specifically. And very early, we focused on Magento as a platform, but have since branched into one other platform plus custom. So we also do big commerce for people that don't need the complexity and the size of Magento. They can get onto a platform like a big commerce, and a lot of folks can do very, very well there. So that's our basic history.
Wow. And by the way, congratulations on compressing a pretty long history into a short time. And that's an extraordinary level of depth of background you got there. So you've done a go at marketplaces, and you've come to your own D2C site. So I'm not going to try and sort of assume that your reasons were the same as the listeners, but I guess I should ask why.
Why we did D2C versus the marketplaces.
Exactly.
Well, in my earliest days, I owned a restaurant, and that restaurant, it ultimately didn't do very well. It was one of my not very happy moments in business. But one of the things I learned early on in that business was that it was very popular at a moment. And then all of a sudden the landlord came and was going to raise my rent significantly because he realized that we were doing well. And this is where I learned this early lesson of, I mean, if you build in somebody else's yard, you lose control. And if my entire livelihood is based on that, that's very, very risky. And so I think when I started building and talking with businesses, I always said, look, you want to be in these marketplaces. You've got to be in these marketplaces, like being in the mall, but it's where people are. But you don't want to have your entire business there, particularly if you're growing and growing and growing. You've got to start to have some control over your destiny. And this is why I always encourage companies to make sure they've got their own direct to consumer, that they can start to control their brand messaging, that they can start to build longer term relationships with those clients. It doesn't have to be an all or none. Most of our clients have come from D2C first, but it doesn't matter which direction you go. But I think you got to spread out.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And one thing you just said is you need to be on the marketplaces because that's quotes where the people are. And that's often been used as an argument I've heard from a lot of Amazon focused people. Most of the people I've been interviewing on the podcast to say, oh, that's why you should be on Amazon, which is not a reason to not be on Amazon. It's a very good reason to be on Amazon. Equally, that's not a good reason to not be on Amazon, right? I think, as you said, it's not either or. It's a false dichotomy, I think. So, and for some reason, the world seems to divide it that way up. Maybe that's just my experience of life, but I know a lot of Amazon sellers. I know people that sell D2C, but there doesn't seem to be that much crossover for some reason. Do you think there's a valid, what do you think's behind that?
I think for a lot of folks, they don't see how they can and should leverage the infrastructure they already have to make it almost just an extension, another marketing channel. I think what ends up happening is it ends up becoming almost like an independent business unit, either side, either the marketplaces or the D2C. And it's very hard to run two very separate business units if you're thinking about it that way. And I think you don't have the mental bandwidth if you're an owner operator. I think that if you've got a marketing department, if you're a little bit bigger, you got a marketing department, they're very focused over here, or you've got all your advertising geared to one direction, all your messaging and marketing. So bridging that gap gets very difficult. When I start to talk with folks, I really want to look at all the assets they have. And typically it's, we start with their product catalog. If you've got supply chain figured out and you've got your product catalog clean and your data clean, which typically if you're doing a lot of SKUs and you're up and selling on marketplaces, you've done at least a good chunk of that work. You've already got this incredible asset. Leverage that and get yourself onto a platform or a tool or a system that can allow you to push that data out, whether it's D2C on your website, whether it's over here to Amazon or one of any other myriad of marketplaces. Meaning, think about the asset not as your Amazon marketplace or your D2C website. For me, most cases, it's your unique product data and the value you bring around that and the ability to fulfill, message, and convey what it is you're selling. Push that out to various channels, and now I think you're leveraging what you've got, and it becomes far less of a mental leap.
Wow. Okay, it's a lot to take on board here. So let me just try and say, no, it's great. This is exactly what the e-commerce is there. This is my other podcast. What 10K Collective is there to serve is people who are having to wrestle with these difficult questions. The question of bandwidth is really important, as you say. I suppose if you can think of it as a subset of one thing, it's really, really helpful. And I guess my next question, you've kind of half answered, which my next question was really, when should you be doing this? So we'll talk about the how in a minute. If you're listening and wondering when we get to it, we will get to the how, I promise. But the when question, I think, is really critical. So you implied you need to have got your products, working, I guess the supply side, sourcing pretty much in the bag. Are there any other sort of trigger points for saying, yes, now is a good time, or maybe it's not the right time, if you're assuming that you're selling on Amazon, for that matter, another marketplace? to help with the decision, now's the time to put DTC in the mix, or it's not the right time? How do you make that decision?
I think it's a business case analysis always. I think if you're new to e-commerce, and a marketplace like Amazon is a fantastic place to get your feet wet, right? I mean, it's fairly low risk. You get out there, you test, you validate your pricing, you validate your ability to fulfill, you validate, is anybody going to buy anything from you, right? I mean, I think these are all good things. I think very quickly you want to start, and I would have it in my business plan early on, whether that's on a napkin or a full-blown business plan, however it is. But I would be thinking very quickly that I'm going to have my D2C site going, because people are going to want to find you anyway. If you've got something at all unique about you, even if it's just your story, even if it's selling a chess set in Russia, right? I mean, your story can't convey very well on Amazon. Yeah, you got your profile and all these things, but people are going to go look for you. They're going to look at your site, and they may still go back to Amazon to buy, because that's initially where they're going to feel comfortable building that relationship with you, though not always. I'm going to come over here now and see who you are. I think getting that going in parallel, even if you're not selling immediately off there, is very important. Then you step by step roll out direct, or you roll out something more maybe unique, a bundle or something you can't quite market on Amazon directly, and it's a little bit unique on your site that maybe makes people want to buy from you direct at that point. So I think it's very quick as soon as you validate your product, essentially.
Okay, great. So for a lot of people that are listening, the target listeners anyway, will already have been in that place for years. So I guess what you're talking about is having a site that is, I don't know what the right word is, brand validation, if you like. So people will go on Amazon. Typically the customer journey would be something like, Amazon's the search engine for products. So you go on Amazon probably with quite high search intent, shopping intent, I should say, buying intent.
Right.
You then find a nice product, maybe, especially if you care about it, it's a gift, or it's maybe something that you worried about, had a bad experience, or any of those reasons, or it's expensive, you're going to probably go and have a Google, right? And then you got to hit your site and your social assets. But I guess what you're talking about there is then not really a direct to consumer site, but a sort of backup for your Amazon sales channel, right? So how do you actually get people to transition from just selling on Amazon? Because obviously you could just get a beautiful looking site which has no e-commerce functionality, if that's what you want. And a lot of sites I see around there, people spend a lot of time and effort on the e-commerce functionality, but it's functioning as a branding site. So how do you work out that sort of relationship?
Yeah, I think that's, I would do it almost immediately, if not immediately. I think there's no reason these days why, particularly if you have a fairly simple product line, that you can't just be turning on e-commerce. I mean, there's almost no excuse today with your Shopify's and your big commerces of the world. I mean, they're inexpensive, easy to get up and running. Whether those are the right platforms for you, and we can dive into that discussion here in a minute, because if you are a bigger, more established company with ERP systems and integration and and multi-channel, may not be the right answer, and that makes things more complex immediately. But wherever you are in this journey, there's no reason why you shouldn't just offer the ability to sell direct. I mean, it's a fairly, I think a dedicated person in 4 weeks could have you up and running, at least at a bare bones level, but looking professional. So to me, this is a note. If you've never been there and it scares you, that's a no-brainer approach. If you've been there and understand it, then you're going to take the more detailed approach. You're going to do a proper discovery. We're going to really make sure we've got all stakeholders. We're going to figure out what's going to be my order of record, and where am I going to do my synchronization of inventory and all. It starts to get to be another whole level there. But so it depends on where you're on this journey, and we can dive into that hopefully. But there's no reason not to. Because this you can get up and running simply. And so, and yeah. I would, honestly, if you're selling anything on Amazon, and I know folks do this to a certain extent, but you gotta, whatever you're sending your packaging, there's gotta be some value to get them to want to come register with you, to come talk to you. Unless your product is so simple, but even a simple product, you're selling a cooking widget, here, download our recipe book, for heaven's sakes, that, makes use of this widget, right? Anything to get them bought into your world, not Amazon world, I think is really, really important, because that's where your long-term business value is going to come. There's no question that Amazon businesses today are still increasing in valuation. If your goal is an exit, there's a lot of consolidation, aggregation, but there's still going to be a bump. I was talking to an M&A expert in the space, and he still said there's still a bump on exit valuation when you own the customer, when you have that relationship, and that pendulum swings back and forth a little bit always, but definitely That's the longer term approach, where you're going to get the highest valuation and the ability to grow.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think there is I think probably a temporary argument to be made on the aggregator side. I guess that's more my comfort zone because I've spoken to an awful lot of aggregators the last few years, and I've
Okay.
seen clients sell to them and friends sell to them. I guess that I would say this. On the one hand, if you've only got an Amazon sort of focused product, it's going to be very quick and easy to integrate into a business that is focused almost 100% on Amazon. Having said that, one of the biggest plays that aggregators make is immediately to set up a DTC site if you haven't got one. Um, and the other thing I would say is, and this is a harder thing to predict, but I think this is something of a bubble. I don't think it's going to disappear. But I would say that the value proposition of having you owning the data, owning the customer relationships is just unarguable. Whereas the Amazon aggregator thing has come from nowhere and could go back more in that direction. That's what I would say in favor of D2C, right?
I think so too.
Do you end up in conversations with people who are selling to aggregators, since we're going down that road, just to think about the sort of end game of this? If you're creating a business to sell it, which more and more people do consciously now that I work with, and if they haven't consciously thought about it, they're now thinking of it or planning for it actively. If you're in a conversation with somebody like that, how do you position their D2C presence?
We have not talked. Again, we tend to work with clients that are that are either have a plan to be long-term in business in e-commerce, or are well-established companies, and either they're improving what they've got or going in with a 20-year vision, right? So I don't talk too often directly with people that are saying, I want to create this business to sell to an aggregator to do it. It doesn't happen in my world too often. My personal opinion is, it's speculative and fine and good, and if you can take advantage of that opportunity, great. But I don't think that's a long-term business play. I think that that pendulum could swing on you very, very quickly. I think, and I'm not sure what direct value you bring at that point that somebody else couldn't recreate fairly quickly also. And I think that's always, when we're talking about what makes a business unique, right? Most anybody could sell a widget or a product, and solve that equation. It's what you bring around that that I think creates that extra value, that extra margin, that long-term valuation, if you will. So,
Yeah, I think you're right. And so the mechanics of getting ranked on Amazon or creating a sort of mediocre product are probably, not what the longer term value is that somebody's going to want to buy, really. I think you're right. I think the aggregators are waking up to that. And the valuations, I suspect, going forwards for mediocre businesses on Amazon will be lower. I was speaking to my friend Ben Leonard, who's a business broker who sold a business to Amazon that was very Amazon focused, to an aggregator. He's Amazon focused, but he's also quite a savvy email and marketing operator, for example. So he had a D2C site that was like 5% of his sales or something.
yeah.
But so, in other words, he knows what he's talking about. And he said that aggregators is probably going to put less value on a mediocre brand, but more on a big brand, which comes back to the D2C as a subset of brand building, I guess, right? Is that really the main value that you're bringing? Or what can you articulate in really concrete terms? If someone's going to have to give up 4 weeks of their life just to get a basic Shopify site, and that's not a lot of time.
Big commerce. We said big commerce, right? Big
or
commerce.
big commerce. Let's say big commerce. Okay, so let's say big commerce, and they're going to do that. But obviously, they could be developing another product line, working on the marketing on Amazon. There's always an opportunity cost. So justify that for them in really concrete terms. What are you going to get for your time that you take away from Amazon?
Like any bit, you're going to have to do your return on ad spend and all these good things. But at the end of the day, you're going to, just like Amazon gives you reach to certain customers, having your own D2C site is going to give you also a broader reach. And whether you're using paid search, SEO, social marketing, whatever pieces you're going to go here, right? I think that's going to expand your reach to other people also. Two, and I think this is where it's really important, is the ability to configure and bundle your products in unique ways, and present them in different ways. You're not just doing a single SKU. You don't have to do just a single SKU. You're going to be able to present, unique add-ons, or maybe even subscription type things with your products, depending on whether they're you can curate, or there's things that are replenishable. I just think it allows you to get deeper with the client. I think things like live chat or responding in social, you're going to have a relationship with these clients that an Amazon seller is not going to be able to have, and you're going to be able to be ahead of the curve. You're going to know when maybe tastes are changing. If you're in a fast changing industry, you're going to be able to anticipate issues that clients are having and maybe solve those and be ahead of the game. And then as soon as you become remotely an expert in this, where am I going to go? I'm a woodworker. I love woodworking. It gets me away from screens. Okay. And there isn't a tool out there that I probably don't feel I need, meaning, I could probably find a reason to buy every single tool in the tool catalog, much to my family's chagrin because the basement's full. But, at the end of the day, I might start on Amazon to look, right, for tools these days, and get an idea of what pricing might be in the lowest pricing. But then I almost always end up on the manufacturer's site or the main distributor's site because they've got the YouTube video on how to use it. They've got there's going to be a Q&A that I'm going to be able to go back and say, I can't figure out how to make this thing, do this, that, or the other. And I feel this affinity. And is it worth the extra 5% for me sometimes? Or is it just worth it that, I was there and they convinced me to buy and they gave me that immediate coupon and, and it was within the range of Amazon anyway? Yeah. And then now they got a relationship with me and now I get 49 catalogs. But, it's, I think that's the value. And I think that's where you stand out immediately.
Excellent. I guess we spend a lot of time on why we should do this, which I think is not a bad question when you're about to devote serious time and effort to something.
Yeah.
But okay, let's get a bit more into the how do we start with this. And so let's assume that we got somebody, let's take a typical mastermind member. Let's say they got, 20 SKUs on Amazon. They're doing, maybe $1 million a year. So by the standards of many of the people you work with, maybe pretty small. And they want to start their DTC site, and they're convinced by the value of all these things you talked about, broader reach, ability to showcase a catalog, obviously, hopefully upsell, downsell, cross sell, increase the lifetime customer value. Super hard to do on Amazon, and that relationship, all of which you can package up and to sell to somebody as a more valuable business. So assuming that we buy into the value prop, okay, and what do they do next? And what are the classic things that people do wrong that they shouldn't do next?
I think that, step one, even if you're only got 20 SKUs, you could have a complex product. And so we want to look at and see, what is it that I'm going to do with this product line that is going to make it stand out and be unique in my D2C site. So I think I would immediately just scan the market. I would look to see what other D2C sites selling my products. How are they positioning? What are they positioning? What do I think my unique position in the market is going to be? Because this is my opportunity to build a story, right? And this is going to be how I'm going to be different, unless you've got a truly unique product, okay, 100%, in which case that's an easier thing to do. So, or you're a manufacturer, you've got that whole backstory. I also think that's another great opportunity, right? Or you're an exclusive distributor. Any of those things allow you to create story immediately. But if you've got something that has a lot of other people that are selling something similar or identical, you want to really think about what is unique about what I'm bringing to the market here that I can add to this. We've got boat part sellers, right? But they, the people that own that company are dedicated boaters. And so they can talk about this product in even in a 30-second YouTube short and throw it on the product page. That does more validation than almost anything else, right? And so because I'm like, they know how to use this thing. They're not just reselling it and marking it up. So I think you want to be thinking about that. Why is my presentation unique? If it's purely just the same thing as anything else, harder sell, right? Then I'm going to be probably competing on price. So that's A. B, I'm going to look at and say, who are all my stakeholders, right? And this can be really pretty small. Obviously to consumers, but do I have sales reps that are dealing with these products? Do I have customer service reps that are dealing with this? Do I have an owner, or do I have a CTO, or is it me, right? Who are all the people that are going to have to deal with this website in some way? And we usually do a real simple matrix. We've got our spreadsheet we share with everybody, just like, look, list all your stakeholders here, list all their dreams, what's the priorities, right? And you work through this matrix on your own. And then we usually come in and help people, even small sites, it's worth doing the exercise, because you start to think about what you need that site to do. Now I can take that information and go, can I fit into a turnkey SaaS tool like a BigCommerce or Shopify, right? And does that cover 98% of what I need? And, assuming all the business risks be on SaaS platforms and all that good stuff. And if the answer is yes, that's probably going to be a good answer for you day one. Or does my product require complex configurations and interdependent options and conditional pricing and all these things that move beyond the ability of a turnkey platform, off-the-shelf platform, and I need more custom. And so in this case, I might be either in the BigCommerce or Magento world, where I have a little more flexibility or a lot more flexibility to present the exact way I need to. So those are going to be the deciding points. Our goal here always is not to make technology the focus. The technology is, and I'm a technology company, I want people to use us, of course, but I want the technology to fall to the back so that it becomes always about the business decision. And that's what we're always consulting with folks about. Look, they say, I want this feature, this function, I want this design. Okay, is it an ego thing or is it really driving the business? And if it's an ego thing, that's okay if that's what you want, right? If it's a brand, if this is just, I want my story told this way and I'm willing to spend the money for that, great. But we all know that's not necessarily going to drive return on investment. Others are very much on I only want to do anything that's going to drive bottom line, right? And so this is what we want to understand at the beginning as well, as we walk through that analysis.
Wow. Okay. This is great stuff. So broadly, how do you get to stand out? So unique positioning, which I think, by the way, is a very, very healthy to be forced to answer that question, because if you don't stand up on Amazon, it's even more brutal than a Google search and DTC, but people can kid themselves about it because stuff is happening. So I think having to think about that's great. Who are the stakeholders? And that's a really good question. Who's got to use the damn thing once you built it? And what do you need the site to do? And by the way, I love that way of saying the business case comes first, that technology serves it, because it's so easy with off-the-shelf products, isn't it, to get something because you've been marketed to that it's attractive, your friends are doing it, and you think, oh, well, therefore I will twist my business case to fit, you name a platform. Other way, if I name one, I'm going to kick off a load of arguments, so I can't be bothered with that. But, it doesn't matter what the platform is. So
Yeah, that's right.
do you see a lot of people falling into that trap, or is it just sort of a side issue?
All the time. Oh, I mean,
Okay.
I think people easily, I fall into this trap, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, right? I mean, we look at the platform and go, oh, I'm going to get all of that's going to work perfectly for me, and I'm going to make my millions, and everything's just going to work. The reality is 9 out of 10 folks, myself included, we're 6 months down the road and go, wow, we're only using 10% of that platform. Wait a minute, did I really need this giant platform if I was never going to leverage all these wonderful, amazing features? So a lot of the times what we'll do with folks is say, hey, if this platform still makes sense, let's start really leveraging it, because you really only get the value usually out of a platform if you really can use what it's got there. Barring exceptions, right? I need to be on this platform for a very specific reason because it integrates with this specific ERP system or something along those lines, right? And there's a reason why I'm doing that. But if there isn't one of those things, you don't want to overbuy, because you end up overcomplicating, and then technology then becomes the forefront, and you're always putting out fires because you're not getting the pure value out of a large platform at that point. Better to start smaller, simpler, and even if that means you might change in a year or two, which likely you may outgrow, or think you can't foresee exactly where you're going to be in 2-3 years. I still think you're ahead of the game if you are maximizing everything out of what you've invested in versus always clawing for the next, I'm at 5% of the usage, 10%, 12%. You just technology always becomes I think a hurdle at that point.
So can you give us a concrete example of that? Because I think I know what you mean, but can you give us some concrete examples?
All right. I can give 2 examples. I'm going to use this even internally. We don't sell e-com, right? We're an agency, so we're all about lead generation. And so my team came to me and said, hey, we want to move to HubSpot. And I said, okay, HubSpot's being a CRM, CMS, really popular, right? I said, look, this is a major platform, right? If we're going to do this, I want to know that the business case suggests that we're not going to just be a year and a half from now, I'm going to be going back and going, why is it we're just sending an email every other day of the week and I don't have any CRM leads in here that are tracked and our website is still over on WordPress, right? I'm not interested in just buying a tool that has the promise of amazing returns if we don't have a dedicated plan to leverage that tool completely. And if we're not, let's find a tool where we can leverage completely. And so in our own world, because we've made that mistake, we have bought into PM, project management systems, we've bought into CRM systems, we've bought into every system under the sun, probably in my lifetime of doing this stuff. And, you're always sort of scratching at it. And the technology, even in our world, like, we're square peg, round hole. And so we had to really learn this issue. In e-com, I will see people say, I've got to be on, so like in the Magento world, I've got Commerce Edition, which is the paid enterprise edition, essentially, and I've got open source, right? And people say, I've got to be on Commerce Edition. Okay, I mean, great. We love Commerce Edition. There's a lot of great things about it. Tell me about your business case. Well, I've got this one product, I'm doing less than $1 million a year, $2 million a year. I don't integrate with anything. I don't, and all of a sudden, like, what's the Commerce Edition for? There's a lot of platform here that you're going to spend to maintain. Well, I'm thinking I'm going to be doing this, this, and this. Okay, how real? This is where it really comes down to how real and how fast you can execute on that. Because maybe, again, better to start with something you can get your hands around, and use and leverage, and not be wasting a lot of overhead on, and outgrow it, or try to get ahead of the game, but essentially force yourself to outgrow it and then move into something more complex.
Okay, that makes more sense. So in other words, what you're saying is force yourself to get something that is just about got enough functionality to do what you need it to do now, and then force yourself to outgrow your platform rather than buy something which has got lots of potential to grow in that you think you're excited about doing, but you don't have a seriously concrete plan. Is that a fair summary, or have I
No, I think so. I
grossly
mean,
defined this?
I
Yeah.
think there are folks that have been down this path many times and know what they're going to need and know how fast they're going to get there. And they can leverage, even if it's going to be a year or two before they can leverage it fully, they know where they're going. But if we're talking about folks that have never gone D2C, it's really easy to get convinced of the next greatest thing. There's always a new D2C platform on the market. And it's really easy to go in and say, I'm gonna spend a lot more to get this thing because it's the latest and greatest, for example, or it's got all these features. And the reality is 9 out of 10 times, you're not going to end up using half those features a year from now, and you're going to be stuck. So what I want to do is, when we're telling people how to pick a platform, right? Not only have we done that needs analysis we talked about earlier and who all the stakeholders are, but also, how well can you support a custom platform? Or do you need to be on something that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting behind for you, right? Are you technically able? Do you have an IT department? Do you not? Do you intend to grow this direction or that direction? These are the kinds of questions that are going to indicate whether you're buy versus build, whether you're doing SaaS or PaaS, right? Platform as a service, or you're doing full on custom. I mean, these are the questions that we want to get to pretty quickly in a needs analysis, because otherwise you're going to find yourself with more than you can handle, and you'll just be wasting money and time. And this is for large companies as well. I mean, we see this even in very large companies. I mean, we're wrestling with this right now with a well-established company. They've been around 50 years. They're smart. They do their own dev. They don't do much in the way of web development. And we ran into this issue, where marketing had a vision. The IT department, who actually has the budget and the deliverable responsibility, saw a vastly different vision, and then we were sort of caught in the middle, not realizing which vision we were supposed to be scoping out, and thankfully, nobody we didn't pull the trigger or anything, but it came back, and boy, there was not a meshing of the interest, and they were going to be on a platform that was, yes, they would have grown into, but man, it was going to be probably a 10-year plan.
That's a long time to cash flow.
It's a long time in technology. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
I always tell people, look, if we get 3 years out of any platform investment, we're happy campers these days. And so just things change relatively quickly. So,
okay, so that brings up the obviously question, that the awkward thing of the big sort of argument. By the way, I'm tapping away for you folks. If you can hear me typing, it's because I'm making notes for you, which you can find over at the blog 10kcollective.com. So on that, the awkward question in the room, I suppose, is the big reason why you might buy something you don't need now is because you're going to grow into it. And the reason that matters is because you really don't want to be changing platforms. It's like changing boats midstream, while everything's happening. But what you said, if you only get 3 years out of a platform investment, implies that you're going to need to do a major upgrade or possibly change platforms anyway. So tell me about platform changing. That sounds like a nightmare. Do you just try and avoid it completely, or do you say we're going to have to do it, so bite the bullet, get what you need now and change later? What's your take on that?
the two kinds of clients I get in my world are what we call rescues and the dreamers, right? And the rescues are, they're on a platform. It may be the wrong platform. It just may be set up incorrectly, but it is the right platform. It may be just that they've never had a good relationship with somebody that can help them support it, right? So you get all that issue going on. And then you get the others that are, I want this thing to be my savior, right? I want, even if they're well established, I fully intend this thing to do everything under the sun and make me millions of dollars. And we all want that. What we want to do in both those situations is get back to the business basics. What is your number one goal here? Is it, if you're e-com, is it to get new clients in? Maybe it's because you're on Amazon, you want to get over to D2C. Is it to increase average order value of my existing clients? Is it to bring them back, right? Those are usually the three biggest things. Increasing average order value for established companies is a nice one because they've already got people coming back, right? And so I'm trying to figure out ways to get a higher sale level. But those are usually the three biggest motivations. In our B2B world, there can be other things, more lead gen or quote development and that kind of thing, but it's still in the same buckets. So when we're talking with folks, we want to sit there and go, okay, and what do we expect to happen here? I mean, what's your worst case, what's your best case scenario? And then, and then we layer that on with, the features and functions they're expecting today and what they think they're out about a year or two. That's going to drive some of the platform decisions. And I think, obviously hopefully the goal is that you're going to be able to at least live within the same ecosystem for many, many, many years. And you just know that you're going to probably be doing, standard upgrades and updates along the way. And then there's going to be a major shift, probably a version shift or something, where if you've got hardcore integrations and with, ERP systems and omni-channel and you're balancing inventory across things, you got to know that within 3 years, you're going to be doing almost essentially the same amount of money that you did day one, you're going to be redoing, even if it's within the same platform. Hopefully, though, your learning curve has settled down and it's by the numbers at that point, and the technology is still sitting in the background. That's the ideal world. But if your world didn't pan out the way you expected, there might be a time to say, maybe my platform does need to shift, or maybe my industry has, a platform has risen that has really catered to my industry very specifically. We see this pendulum swing back and forth. Sometimes, wow, there's some really great solutions that take into account the nuances of a particular industry. And that can be very useful. Again, usually last 3, 4, 5 years, right? And then things have changed again in the market, and you have to reevaluate. So as much as you can stay within the ecosystem, great. But I'd say it's 50-50 shot you're going to.
Okay, thank you. That's a very nice reality check. I think I think it's important to have goals, but also some kind of sense of how realistic it is to achieve them. And I think that's very, very helpful. 50% chance that you will stay within the same ecosystem for 3 years or whatever, but equally you should aim to do it because it's going to be a lot of work. And equally, what you said, another reality check. If you're integrating with other things, and ERM, so what's that? Enterprise Resource Management System
planning.
Or something on
Planning.
So the ERP, sorry. CRM, by the way, I try and make sure there are no 3-letter abbreviations. So that's a customer resource management, or sort of email plus, could be anything integrating email, SMS contacts, phone calls, etc. Right. So, but anyway, whatever you're doing, if it's integrating with other things, what you're saying is you're going to have to spend about the same amount of money, effectively the same kind of cost as if you were changing platform every 3 years anyway. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, if you're growing and you're integrating and you're developing, even just, yes, I think so. I think, we always try, people always want to believe no, but at the end of the day, it always ends up being that way. So.
Yeah, but I guess one of the things that I think is helpful for somebody who's really sort of at the early stages of that journey is, don't stress about making a perfect platform decision that's going to be valid for 10 years, because what you're saying is you've got a 50-50 shot. And even if you get it right in 3 years' time, it's going to feel almost the same and financially as if you got it wrong anyway. So I guess that takes the pressure off that decision,
I think
right?
It's great. Yeah.
It's a primitive way of putting it, it's a hugely reductionist. So in other words, don't stress about being perfect, do your best to make it, be meticulous about the research to maximize the chance of it being right, which is what you're saying. And the stakeholder analysis sounds like a really good idea to me. And quite often in a smaller situation, we've got 2 business partners and a few VAs knocking around. You'll have one business partner that gets to be in his bonnet. The other person goes, yeah, whatever, it's your pet project. And then there's no consultation at all. So I would say the chances of you changing platform are going to be much higher there. So I love the fact that again, what you're saying, Robert, you've got a huge technological background and experience and very clearly a great passion for this. I can see the fun that you have for this stuff. But I love the fact that you bring it back to business basics. I think it's funny how often it comes back to that, right? If your business case isn't solid and there's not a good reason for doing something, then it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to go wrong. And equally the other way around, you'll figure it out, is what I'm getting from you. So obviously, however, you guys are experts at DTC people. So tell us a bit about what you do if people are curious to learn more from you or get some help. How do you help people is the critical question.
Well, step one is just, whether they're just starting their e-commerce journey or they've been in it and they want to improve it, we love that conversation. Even if we're not going to be the right partner long-term for them, we love the initial conversation because we always learn something as well. And so, but we'll help people sort of just at a 10,000 foot level initially, just say, hey, what's going right, what's going wrong, where do we see the opportunities right now? We're in this industry, and I'm not a coder. I mean, I came up from the business side of things, and I've got a lot of smarter people on my team that do all the heavy lifting on the technology, and we can sort of bring in both those perspectives on any call with folks and help them think about that. Then if we are a good fit, we can usually ascertain that pretty quickly with somebody. We'll usually go into some version of a discovery or needs analysis or code review, depending if it's a rescue, right? But understanding those stakeholders, what are you trying to accomplish and what's not working today? And whether that's with an existing platform or the dream of a platform. And then from there, we're going to help guide the selection process. And if it's a one of the few tools that we specialize in, then we're obviously going to pitch our service to be, to build that for them. If it's not, we will send somebody and suggest them other folks that we think would be a good fit. So
great. That sounds like a really valuable thing, because you're starting macro to micro. It's a big picture to small picture, which again, as a general, it sounds incredibly generalized to say it, but again, you see that across business, that if you start at the detail end, it nearly always goes horribly wrong. Very, very good. And strategically, I should say. What are the tools that you do specialize in? Because you mentioned BigCommerce. So what are the Magento?
So Magento and BigCommerce are our the two platforms that we today will still think are probably the best solutions for most companies. And this is a broad-based answer, but and then we also do custom builds with microservices and things where somebody has a truly unique product or business case that can't fit within a commercial off-the-shelf type of platform. And so that's where we specialize. We chose BigCommerce over Shopify about a year and a half ago as our core partner, because we just looked and said we felt the APIs and the ability to grow and configure within that SaaS tool were still more flexible and allow for companies to, I think, grow and scale in a way that I think you're just a little more limited in a Shopify world, depending on what you're doing. So.
Yeah, and I can hear the argument starting already, because this is going on social media. So, if you feel strongly, feel free to pop something in the comments. It's always a fun debate. But I mean, I think, again, this is a kind of how many angels dance on the head of a pin kind of debate sometimes. I think, well, look, if you haven't got any kind of business case and you don't have any conversations under your belt with somebody about DTC, then go and talk to somebody. If you can get hold of somebody with your level of expertise, they'd be very lucky, I think, because I like the fact that you start with the big picture and you end up with a technology platform rather than being really partisan about it. And the fact that you considered Shopify rather than just dismissing it. And, you've really looked into it. Interesting conversation, because I get a lot of sort of, WordPress is amazing, WordPress is awful, Shopify is amazing, and you get those conversations that are platform specific. It's a bit like party politics; it just gets ugly, and people stop thinking, don't they? So,
and I will tell folks to know it. If you love it and it fits with you, again, we want the technology to fall to the back, right? I mean, I don't want somebody to spend 5, 10, 50, well, in some cases, $500,000. I mean, because e-commerce sites can range anywhere from, you can get up and running for $500. You can spend $500,000. I mean, it really goes this gamut, and you can do that on a Shopify platform. Heck, you could do that on WooCommerce with WordPress. Okay, so it's a question of really looking at the whole picture, and this is where I think people need a third party, and hopefully an unbiased third party, to really help them say, okay, what am I getting out of this? And is it going to get me at least from A to B over the next 3 years, right? I think this is my rough order of magnitude. And so, and if the answer to those questions is yes, well then, Shopify can be just fine.
Exactly, yeah. So you're perfectly willing to say Shopify is good. And I have those conversations as well. Just because you specialize in something, I had somebody approach me today for private label Amazon, business model consulting, and I said to her, look, this is not the business model I specialize in. Talk to these guys over here. And I'm not going to get anything out of that, I think, financially, which is a bit painful. But I think if somebody has the ability to stand back and do a needs analysis for the client, that's the person you want to be talking to. Talking to, I guess we better wrap this up, because I know we've all got to dash off and do other things. But if people aren't quite in the position where they want to have a full-on consultation with you, but want to keep following what it is you're doing and learning from you, what's the best place to follow you on the web?
Hey, I'd say there's two spots. We have launched our Shaping E-commerce with Ironplane, where all the much smarter people than me on my team share their knowledge about stuff and that they've gleaned over the last 10, 15 years. So that's on YouTube and wherever you like listening to podcasts, Shaping E-commerce with Ironplane. Love it if people like and subscribe to that. And then seriously, you can find me on LinkedIn. I love the conversation, and my team loves having these conversations. So hit me up. You got a question? I'm happy to share my insights. Whatever.
Great. So that's Shaping E-commerce by Ironplane and a
Yeah.
good podcast or YouTube near you. And yeah, LinkedIn. It's funny. A lot of people don't use LinkedIn much. I'm one of those people, and then some people in the mastermind actually swear by it. So obviously, you're one of those people that is a big LinkedIn user. So I think in the business to business world, it's often where the real conversation happens, right? Not on Facebook.
I think so. We're being dragged kicking and screaming into Facebook these days. And my director of content says we have to be in this market, and I'm like, or social, this conversation. I'm like, okay, I have no idea. So, but yeah, LinkedIn is typically where I'll respond. So
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. Well, look, we were going to talk about leveraging an existing product catalog onto DTC. I'm inclined to sort of pop that on as a little extra here because I think we've covered a lot of this stuff.
yeah.
Let's talk quickly about that before we wrap up. So, in about 10 minutes, how do we even sort of go about this? So, you've got a bunch of catalogs. So, for example, I've got some people that work with us in the mastermind. Have got maybe 2,000 SKUs. They're selling business to business. They've got maybe 300 or 400 of them onto Amazon. If you're then putting a D2C site into the mix, how do you decide what products are worth putting onto that and what products to leave alone, thus saving yourself thousands of man hours and a lot of money, I'd imagine? So how do you go about that sort of question?
When you say man hours, are you meaning just getting the data into the D2C site, or are you meaning all the work that goes into sourcing those products and keeping them in inventory and things? Because you're already doing that, right?
Good question. Yes or no, I suppose. Yeah, that's a very good question. I suppose that you've kind of, by your very smart question, you're kind of answering it, which is, okay, where do we even need to spend the time and effort? And I guess that it's a selection and technology question, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, Let me ask a cleaner question. How do we decide which products to put on our D2C site first?
So this is where I never understand folks that tell me they're going to limit what they put on various places. I mean, unless there's a defining market reason why I don't want this product to be up here with this other product, which I mean, I guess can happen, or I've got distributor rules, or I've got, other regional sales rules. I'm not allowed to do this. My feeling is take your database, this catalog, and make it perfect. And whether you're using a product information manager, a PIM, or you're going to use your new DTC site as your PIM or your product information management system, or you're using Excel or Google Sheets, it almost doesn't matter, at least at some stage here. Get nice, clean data, and I would put it all up. There's no reason in my mind why I would not push my product that I have the ability to fulfill into every channel. This is where I talk about leveraging what you've got. This is your asset. You figured out how to get this product, how to price this product, how to fulfill this product. And whether you're fulfilling direct or through FBA or anywhere else, right? You've got that figured out. That's the beauty. Now, slap some nice marketing messaging on it that hopefully is meaningful or real or authentic or something with some social validation. And I would push this into all channels. And and this is where I say, we always talk about Amazon, but I mean, gosh, there's 7-8 other channels you can and should be in that are marketplace adjacent. I mean, and whether we're talking about Wish or Frugal or eBay or Walmart or Instamarkets, Instagram, right, and Facebook Marketplace, and all these places, you have this data. If you can push it up and you have the ability to centralize order processing and inventory management, so you're not overselling a product SKU, to me, this is the beauty. That you figured out the hard part of getting the product. Let's just get it out there now. So,
okay. I mean, the only thing I would say is that you've got the product in a warehouse somewhere, and yeah, for sure, designing products, working with people to get the quality you want, get at the price that is potentially profitable, depending on how you sell it, is really, really hard. No argument from me. And then you got the marketplaces or the D2C site. But there's that little matter of trying to integrate how much stuff have we got into the warehouse and accurately get that delivered, right? So that's not a trivial matter. I think this is where a good
platform, and this is where I think people often forget that the D2C platform very often can serve as your order management system and your inventory management system. So very often, one of our clients who does sell most of their SKUs on Amazon as well, we have all that fully integrated in. We bring in all orders into Magento. And so the inventory synchronization is almost immediate at all times. I mean, we do leave buffers. We do allow for buffering and things like that because you don't want to oversell, particularly in certain channels. But we allow that to come in, and then we have we use, in this case, another system to handle the fulfillment and the multi-warehouse choosing based on location, all that good stuff. So some of it's FBA, some of it's through their own warehouse. So this is part of where a good platform can make that much easier. And whether it's living in the platform, the e-com platform like a Magento or BigCommerce, or it's living in a third-party system that's bringing all that data together, that's part of the analysis sometimes, and depends on how complex the business is. Or how
Okay. Yeah, so I guess when I haven't heard PIM, that's another abbreviation for me. So Product Info Management System. Obviously, there's things like LinWorks and what have you, but it's interesting that you're saying that at a certain level, and I guess for the sort of people I probably would have in mind, the use case for, um, 7 to maybe low 8-figure sellers that are primarily on Amazon. By the time people are 8 figures, they've normally got their own DTC. It doesn't mean they're doing it well, though. I can't learn from this conversation. But I guess what you're saying is the platform at that level could become your kind of hub for managing, how much stock you've got, and then, liaising probably automated way with your fulfillment houses, right? So you don't necessarily have to have a separate product information management system.
Not at all. In fact, very few have that, even in the larger companies. I would say that in this case, there's no question you could take your platform, and whether it's BigCommerce or Magento, you would be able to integrate with your Amazon or even other marketplaces. You can even push data up to those SKUs in terms of descriptions and all that stuff. You could make it one single management system for that product information, and it's just going to be different in this channel, different in this channel, D2C, etc. And then bring down the fulfillment. Yeah.
Okay, well, my mind is suitably blown. I mean, these are not quick, casual things to set up overnight. But all I can say
not crazy hard either.
No.
I would love to say that you need to book this, for a $500,000 product. No, I mean, it really isn't that. I suppose it's easy because we know how to do it, but it doesn't have to make or break somebody's. I mean, they can do this. Anybody can do this.
I love it. I like your optimism. So I know you've got a furniture company that you work with that has thousands of variations. It sounds like it could be quite a nightmare. So to try and give us this story to take us home with, that is an example of the fact that it's not too hard to do. If that story is indeed an example of.
Okay, so now I'm going to say that one is a unique one in that it's not as if. So they're a furniture company, GatCreek.com. Love Gat Creek. They are a U.S. based manufacturer of high quality furniture, a lot of mid-century modern stuff. But here's their unique business case. They sell in multiple wood types. Okay, let's just say for sake of argument 4. They sell in multiple finishes with multiple hardware options. So there's no way across their entire line of, let's say, I hope they don't get mad at me. Let's just say it's 1,000 unique products. I can't remember the exact number, right? But you take that and multiply by all those various options, right? There's no way you could ever have a sample to shoot proper photography for all those options, right? And they're dependent options. If I have this wood type, it can only come in these particular stains with this particular hardware. So there's all these conditional options. Very hard to make those conditional options viable on some of the more turnkey Shopify BigCommerce platforms. You can, but it becomes a little bit of a square peg round hole. So now we've got that issue combined with having to link into a manufacturing system and fulfillment system that's already established. This is where a Magento comes in real handy, because it allows for that kind of customization. On top of that, they took it one step further using 3Kit, which is an Ironplane partner as well, but phenomenal in 3D virtualization. So now you can go on to GatCreek.com and you can see live generation of every finished wood grain hardware option in 3D virtualization. So, that's pretty impressive. Ability to now see these products, and it's not static, and it wasn't just a Photoshop layering on a color. You really can feel the wood grain. You can really get a sense of this. And I know they're already thinking long-term how to do augmented reality and bring that into so you can see it in your own room, right? So this is where I think D2C allows you to take a product, and it doesn't be this complex, but make it unique and stand out in a way that you can't on your direct Amazon marketplace, right? This is where you become the authority and the credible source of that product. And there's just so much flexibility to do that in almost any of these platforms.
Wow. Okay. So
Sorry,
I guess
could you say that again? Sorry, I'm having trouble.
So sorry, that was my Siri.
That's no problem.
That was my watch.
Okay.
At me.
Amazing. No problem. So I guess what you're saying is, that's a very, very interesting example of the fact that you'd actively be kicked off the Amazon platform for using 3D rendering. So I guess that Amazon doesn't like round pegs. It wants everyone to have a square peg to fit in their square holes they've created. And for a lot of people, actually, that's a great match. And there's no point in reinventing the wheel and other such cliches. But it sounds like what you're saying is that although they had a unique reason to have their own site, so they're kind of forced in a direction away from the traditional solutions, perhaps, or off the peg or turnkey solutions, it actually meant that almost by accident they've ended up with something very unique. So from a marketing position, that's fantastic. The differentiation, the authority, as you say, is very strong, because they've been forced to do something that is actually industry leading. And that's a very interesting point that actually I think a lot of us get lazy in the Amazon space, and the fact that we have to be more creative often when we're forced to wrestle with problems that we haven't had to wrestle with when we're doing a DTC build. It forces us to be better entrepreneurs and be more, end up, necessity being the mother of invention, we end up more creative. Listen, fascinating. I don't think we can top that story. I think we should leave it there before everyone else's minds are as blown as mine is. So fantastic stuff. Just remains for me to say, Robert Giovannini. I'm sorry. Let me try that one again. Just remains for me to say, Robert Giovannini of Ironplane, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom today.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Great. Well, look, if you're still listening on the lives, you've got great stamina. And thank you so much for listening to the end. Don't forget to check out what Ironplane does. And you'll probably find Robert not so much on the platforms like Facebook. But if you're on LinkedIn, which we're also streaming to right now, then go check him out and send the man a DM if you've got any questions. This is a brain that can cope with all sorts of complex strategy. Quite amazing stuff. So thank you so much for listening live.